he hasn't wrestled a real back and forth match in close to 2 decades, the love and admiration for Bret the Hitman Hart has never subsided. When Hart's name is mentioned by one of today's stars or he makes a guest appearance as a distinguished legend, the ovation that his name and presence receive are still staggering, comparable to the response that he would earn as WWE's top hero in the mid-90s. What is it about Bret Hart that keeps him at the forefront of our personal favourites? Is it his earnestness, the down-to-earth yet suitably confident manner in which he carries himself? Is it because as a wrestler he backed up all of his boasts inside the ring to where you could depend on him to carry your hopes without dropping them? Maybe it's his peerless brilliance as a technical wrestling wizard, blending crisp strikes and form-perfect maneuvers with seamless storytelling, an artist swiping one masterstroke after another. Or perhaps it's because Bret Hart is the best tribute to our own wrestling dreams. He was workmanlike and calm, the opposite of over-the-top and gaudy. We see ourselves in the Hitman, the way that we relate to other wrestlers that demonstrate genuine humanity through their work. But few of that ilk could do so like Bret Hart. At once heroic and mild-mannered, a blend that very few could excellently execute in the manner that he could. I'm Sam from Cultaholic.com, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Bret Hart. Join us. Number 10. Movie magic. Bret Hart claimed to have the ability to see a wrestling match play out in his mind like a movie, a skill that would clearly serve him well as a creative performer and trusted ring general alike. Such a skill can be flexible and used in other occupations. In fact, when Bret was still in high school, his then career ambitions would have benefited from having that sort of intuition, and those ambitions weren't in professional wrestling. As a high school student, Bret dreamed about being a filmmaker, going so far as to use money he'd made as a wrestling referee and laborer toward buying film equipment. He planned to attend college at Calgary's Mount Royal University to follow his filmmaking goal, only to discover that he was late in selecting his classes, and the film courses were full. Among the classes he attended instead, Hart was courted to join the school's wrestling squad, having posted an impressive record in high school. Encouraged by nearly pinning a Canadian national champion during a meet, Hart gravitated toward the world of sport as well as the family business. He realized he could still make movies, they would just be in the ring. Number 9. Hit the ground stumbling. Some wrestlers make impressive debuts while others have disastrous ones, particularly those who are wearing bejeweled stormtrooper helmets as they fell through walls. Bret Hart's WWE debut in 1984 wasn't as ignominious as that of the Shockmaster's introduction to the world, but it was also not a sign of things to come. It was on August 29th, 1984 in Brantford, Ontario that Hart wrestled his first WWE match at a set of TV tapings, teaming with oftentimes wrestling rival and real-life in-law Dynamite Kid against Iron Mike Sharp and Troy Alexander. Hart had underwent knee surgery 2 months before the match, and by his own admission, he'd come back to the ring far too soon. He had limited mobility going into the bout and made a few fundamental errors within the match to boot. Bret remembers coming back through the curtain with Dynamite, where Vince McMahon completely ignored him and praised Dynamite. Bret said of his performance that night, "I was horrible and I knew it." Of course, much better days wouldn't be far ahead. Number 8. A real Canadian stampede. Whether he was a heel or a babyface for virtually his entire career, Bret Hart was Bret Hart. It didn't matter if he was the Hitman, a nickname he officially adopted in 1985, or just plain old Bret Hart. What you saw was what you got with Bret. He had no real gimmick aside from the heroic version of himself or the treacherous version of himself amplified. The closest Bret ever came to being given a specific character or gimmick came in February 1985, and he hated the very idea. It was WWE booker George Scott that told Bret the plan to turn him into a cowboy, which would include an entrance that would see him ride out on a horse before each match. While Bret may have had the rugged good looks and rustic upbringing necessary to make the character work, he ultimately declined the role, famously noting, "Where I come from, if you called yourself a cowboy, you better be one." Number 7. Made in the shades. One of Hart's most recognizable traits is his habit of wearing sunglasses, and the wraparound shades with the rubber strap that was standard throughout much of his WWE tenure were preceded by a set of tinted aviators. Given Hart's pretense as the cool, calm, and collected half of the Hart Foundation, the sunglasses lent him a certain cool flair when he was a heel alongside Jim Neidhart. But in actuality, the sunglasses actually helped Hart keep his cool. In the summer of 1985, the Harts, along with manager Jimmy Hart, filmed some promos at a TV taping. And when Bret watched their first takes back on a monitor, he was horrified to see his eyes shifting out of sheer nervousness. Although Bret would improve promo-wise over the years, he paled mightily next to Neidhart, along with other more colourful WWE WWE stars at the time. Thus, he began wearing his trademark sunglasses in interviews to build his confidence and disguise any nerves. Number 6. Exit strategies. It was a dark day in the fall of 1997 when it was announced that Bret Hart would be leaving for WCW after more than 13 years of employment with Vince McMahon and WWE. Hart had outlasted every other wrestler from the early days, and at 40 he was practically a working elder statesman of the company. What sometimes gets overlooked is that previously Hart wrestled with the idea of leaving for WCW in several different instances. In September 1989, Bret was put in touch with then WCW champion Ric Flair by Brian Pillman after Hart wanted to explore his options due to some financial hardships at the time. However, Bret chose to stay when WCW's offer was barely more than his WWE deal. More than 2 years later, Bret, by then Intercontinental Champion, reportedly almost accepted an offer to jump to WCW, only to realize that his contract with WWE was still valid, after rolling over without his realizing it. And of course, Hart entertained a massive offer from a spend-heavy Eric Bischoff in 1996, choosing to instead sign a 20-year contract with WWE, but of course, we all know how that one turned out. Number 5. Target practice. 2 days after WrestleMania 7 in 1991, at WWE's TV tapings in Las Vegas, Bret embarked on his new singles push, which coincided with the debut of his new finishing hold, the Sharpshooter. The first victim of Bret's new finish would be a preliminary wrestler named Barry O, the O being short for Orton. He was the brother of Cowboy Bob and the uncle of future WWE star Randy. Interestingly enough, Hart didn't even know how to apply that Scorpion Deathlock submission hold until after he'd arrived at the tapings. Pat Patterson asked him out of the blue if he knew how to execute the move, and Hart admitted that he didn't, but he could learn it quickly enough. By Hart's recollection, the only wrestler on site that knew how to do it wasn't even a WWE contracted talent. It was Conan, who was there to wrestle a dark match against Louis Spicolli. Conan taught Hart the move right there in the arena, and Hart would use it for the first time as his finish just a few hours later. Number 4. A rare finish. The Sharpshooter would be Hart's preferred method of execution for the remainder of his career, with names like Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin, Randy Savage, and countless others falling victim to the hold. It was also the move that Hart used to win his first world title when he made Ric Flair submit to the leg lock in October 1992 in his native Canada. But perhaps surprisingly, the Sharpshooter wasn't always a pay-per-view winner for Hart in world title matches. Between 1992 and 1997, Hart wrestled in 18 world title matches on WWE pay-per-views, finishing with a career record of 10 wins, 7 losses, and 1 no contest in that stretch. Of those 10 wins, only 3 saw him gain victory by submission via the Sharpshooter. Against Shawn Michaels at the 1992 Survivor Series, Razor Ramon at the 93 Royal Rumble, and the Patriot at the September 97 In Your House. Additionally, the win over Michaels was the only time that Bret won via the Sharpshooter in a pay-per-view main event for WWE. Number 3. Wrestling royalty. WWE added a 5th pay-per-view, the King of the Ring, to its calendar in 1993, and the beneficiary of the addition would be the Hitman. Hart won the first televised edition of the tournament, defeating Razor Ramon, Mr. Perfect, and Bam Bam Bigelow in the course of one evening to earn the crown and scepter. This wasn't Hart's first time earning such an honor, though. You see, prior to 1993, the King of the Ring was actually a thing in WWE. A special tournament held on a random house show, usually in the New England area, between 1985 and 1991, though no tournament was held in 1990. Hart was the winner of the 1991 version held in Providence, Rhode Island, defeating Erwin R. Shyster in the final round. To this date, Hart is the only man to win the tournament more than once. Both Randy Savage and Kurt Angle have made it to the finals more than once, but only Bret can claim the royal splendor on 2 occasions. Number 2. The ecstasy of gold. Bret was a classic example of a wrestler who climbed the ladder up the card in WWE. In his early time in the company, Hart and his brother-in-law, Jim Neidhart, worked their way to the top of the tag team division. After becoming a full-time singles star, Hart would find himself at the top of the company before long, running the promotional gauntlet up to the main event tier. When Hart defeated Ric Flair to become WWE champion in October 1992, he became the second man following Pedro Morales to win the company's triple crown of the World, Intercontinental, and Tag Team belts. A year and a half later, after defeating Yokozuna to become champ once more at WrestleMania 10, Hart made history when he became the first man to ever win the triple crown twice. He held the IC and tag belts each twice previously, previously, and the win over Yokozuna clinched the double honor. Hart is also the first man to win the Triple Crown in both WWE and WCW, a feat that would later be duplicated by Chris Benoit, Ric Flair, and Booker T. And number 1, a different WrestleMania streak. Hart's reliability throughout his WWE tenure would see him take part in every possible WrestleMania during his time with the company, except for the first one in 1985. He's wrestled in main event matches, 5-star matches, title bouts, and even high-profile battle royals across WrestleManias 2 through 13, and his frequent participation would earn him another unique honor. For many years, Bret Hart held the record for most consecutive WrestleManias taken part in with at least one match on the actual pay-per-view card. His win over Steve Austin in '97 gave him 12 straight Manias wrestled at, and it would take more than a decade and a half for someone else to surpass that mark. Triple H and Kane both had their chances, but injuries to the former and pre-show relegations to the latter stopped their momentum dead. Naturally, the man who broke Bret's mark was The Undertaker, who did miss a couple of WrestleManias earlier on due to injury. But his win over CM Punk at WrestleMania 29 in 2013 gave him 13 straight, putting him past Bret's dozen. For Bret, his endurance and resilience must be appreciated, for it wasn't until many years after his retirement that another wrestler, and a part-timer at that, could top his continued excellence. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic. You can check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you like what we do here at Cultaholic, you can check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/Cultaholic. And no matter what you do, don't ever forget to hit subscribe and join us.